Hello, and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host, not just for tonight, but for all of 1982. Tonight is a very, very special episode because it's a little movie called Blade Runner. I did some research today on the internet. People have heard of this movie, and they have got a lot of feelings. Not necessarily when it came out, but definitely today. I am going to be hosting a competition where two people will come in and talk to me about Blade Runner. I will give them points based on how well they talk, how few times they mess up, and over like their compliments. And if they make me laugh, I have to give them a point, I think. Our returning champion, who absolutely obliterated the movie 48 Hours last week, is Mike Gravano.
Are you not entertained? Also a Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah, thanks for all that, Mike. And coming back,
yeah,
like you want to try this again? Is Greg
gonna give it another shot? What happens if you like the movie? Maybe liking the movie will give me the inside track.
Well, is it liking the movie or is it agreeing with the host? Because
Feeling the same. You can make all the good points, but if it's against his opinion, in one ear out the other.
And not for all hosts, but definitely for me. And I have sort of, this movie's always left me a little weird, a little cold, a little more impressed and respect. Like, I respect it more than I loved it. That changes every time I watch it. It's not just that you, like, learn more about how the plot goes. I definitely think I have a firm grasp on the plot, but there's still, it opens itself up the more and more you watch it. Mm-hmm. So, although it's not my favorite movie of all time, I do like it more than I have. We'll start with you, Mike. Where are you with this movie right now?
It's baffling how long it took me to watch this movie in my life, given who I am. I should have owned a Blu-ray before they ever came out and watched every Sunday. I watched this as an adult and did not like it one iota. And I don't know if it was the hype. I don't know if it was because it was the theatrical release and his wooden everything killed it for me. But
that's what it is.
Now, my friends, oh my God, I fucking loved this movie.
Now you're Blade Runner guy. Welcome.
I for a long time I was like, Blade Runner 2049 is infinitely better than the original. And now I don't know. I have to go back and watch the new one again.
Dude, you'll just keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll never come down with an answer.
It's like, who do I agree with? It's whoever talked last, the Democrat or the Republican. You know, that's just what I'm into. I think that all of the cuts are fascinating. We're going to get into a little bit of that tonight, but I'm not sure if it changes my opinion that much, Greg, so to argue with you, because so much of it is just the feel of the movie, which is always there. How much more superior is the final cut to everything else?
To me, in my personal estimation, there's this experience of watching this movie where you have to get on its wavelength. And you have to be like, okay, there's things I don't understand about the culture in this movie, but I'll pick it up eventually. I mean that with the final cut. With the theatrical release, anytime there was a moment where there was just like quietly going through the city, the producers freaked out. One in particular freaked out and was like, we have to have explainers about every part of this world so that our viewers at home won't be at home. The viewers in the theater won't be lost. And what that does is it forecloses all of your excitement about the boundlessness of the world. Mm-hmm. And coupled with the fact that Harrison Ford did not want to do this, and in fact had to be reminded he was contractually obligated to do it, and the fact that he let that seep into his performance in a profound way, in a way like he was daring them to be like, use this shit if you want to then. And the game of chicken ultimately destroys the movie. I think that's why the theatrical release audiences were like, yeah, that was okay. Because instead of having this big, open, wondrous world, you had whatever Harrison Ford in monotone tells you is the meaning of all of this different stuff. And I just do think that dramatically changes it. And there's a lot of just like vibe scenes in both this cut and in Blade Runner 2049. And Blade Runner is a vibe. Like, it's also a good movie. It's also interesting, but is primarily about a vibe and an aesthetic and a like. It's almost like a tone poem. You know, it has to unveil itself very slowly through a series of movements. And when you don't give it the space to do that, which is what happens with a theatrical release, it's not given any time or any space. It can't establish itself in the way that it wants to.
There's just no way. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say his narration doesn't explain things. It pulls you out of the movie.
I mean,
so you don't get that overwashing of vibes and tones.
In the narration, it starts, I'm Harrison Ford, playing a character named Rick Decker, who's talking right now. Like that's not gonna get you into
Meet
the world
my
of the movie.
friend Edward James Olmos.
He might be a robot, so I'm going to deliver these lines as if he were a robot.
Man,
also, is the ending different?
Yes.
my
Okay,
original
it felt
ending was driving through a forest.
Yeah, the original ending. Throughout, there's a lot of things that reminded me of Brazil watching this movie, but the ending of the real ending of Brazil and the original ending of this, I think, were closer together. But Brazil did it much better.
That was part of the like hostage taking by one of the producers. Like, one of the producers was like, we have to have a happy ending that literally shows them driving to freedom in like an environment that has not existed. And so they went to Stanley Kubrick and they got like some of his B-roll from filming the opening to The Shining, and they were like, we'll just use this then. And so like it's like
Victoria's happy movie.
Not only does it not fit in with the movie in a lot of ways, it's from a different movie.
I mean, I remember the music, and this is very famous music. Not exactly my jam, but Vangelis.
Very much mine, though.
Like, even the music changes to like this big, broad, sweeping. We're driving through the forest, because they have these like ideas of what movies need to do, and one is be very clear, and two is leave them with a happy ending. And it's really hard even today to be like, even with the success of Blade Runner now, and how it all blew up and how it became this incredibly big, important motion picture film, if you want, that it's still hard to say to producers, no. Nobody's going to like it when it first comes out, but trust me, it will get there at some point. You can't say
your
that.
Kids will love it.
But your kids are going to love it. Okay, so I think that we're all going in, even if I'm the least positive about the movie, I think it's incredible, and you guys are through the moon. So, over the moon, shooting the moon.
Through the moon, Alice.
So that makes me even more excited to talk about it when we come back. Blade Runner. To quote Harrison Ford's Rick Deckard, it's time to do a Blade Runner, y'all. 1982's Blade Runner went from commercial flop and mostly critical flop to one of the most influential sci-fi films of all time, creating a dark, rainy, dystopic future genre all by itself. The film tells the story of the aforementioned Rick Deckard, a former cop who became a Blade Runner, which is essentially a bounty hunter who tracks down runaway robots. Deckard tracks them down one by one until he finally meets up with Roy Batty. His name is Roy Batty.
King Crazy, yeah.
His name is Roy Batty.
He's a little baddie.
The DD, the English, his British villain. I didn't pick that up. Played by Rutger Hauer. Taste buds, that barely scrapes the top level of a skin job, but let's get into it. We just got done trying to figure out what a Ridley Scott film is like 6 episodes ago. So let's do it again. Ridley Scott is the master of blank. How would you fill in that blank?
I would say the master of
the
disaster. Sorry, Greg, what's your real thing?
Greg, shut the fuck up. I have something to say.
I did have a real thing, but then my brain said, say disaster.
Go, Mike.
Oh,
please.
I think he's the master of tactileness. You can fucking touch whether it's an alien in not the Nebuchadnezzar, in the alien ship, or in this, you can fucking feel the future grease and slime. Everything feels lived in, and none of it's like, ooh, it's the future, so this is nice. And or if it's in The Last Duel, or if the Italians, everything fucking feels real, and you can get dirty, and you fucking will, because it's a Ridley Scott movie.
I mean, like, what percentage of the budget went to building this one street that Harrison Ford walks down 3 or 4 times in the movie?
Yeah.
That became absolutely iconic. Like, that's his scenes of like trying to eat a bowl of noodles and then the cops coming and taking him away. That right there created endless movies.
It was a Great ode to this movie in Point Break, because Harrison Ford said 4 dumplings, 2, 4 dumplings.
Mike.
For me, I would say, and maybe it's a weak answer, but world building, and it's kind of the same thing there, which is, it's not just that set of that street which is so impressive. It's the way in which extras are utilized, the way in which the like huge cast of background characters makes everything feel so crowded and so crushed in, and the way that really, really helps to establish Rick Deckard's being such a loner. Really, like we have someone surrounded by people but connected to absolutely nobody, and I think that provides a lot of the really important clues about who he is and what his origins really are. He can walk through a crowd of people, and it's like he's not even there with them. He eats alone at this outdoor bar. He's in a house he's in a small apartment full of pictures, but it's like, who are these pictures? Who are these people that are supposed to be related to him? And it is that's necessary. To get that, we have to get that world building. We have to feel that complete, like the entire planet basically comes to LA in this story. And it's a world that's depopulated, and yet at the very city centers, everything is extremely crowded. And he builds that world so convincingly. Through set, through extras, through costumes, through great paintings. This has like some of the all-time sci-fi paintings, the background scenes, and he does all that stuff so that he can spend more time with the characters, and so that the world becomes a 3-dimensional place, and then he really develops the characters as 3-dimensional spaces.
Right. So you don't have to have the scene of like the president and the prime minister of Earth saying, "Man, world's really gone to shit, and here's why." And
good thing we have the Blade Runners. They're bounty hunters that bring in, and that's the crime. That's really the crime of the voiceover, right? Is because the voiceover takes the strongest part of the movie and covers it up with terrible voiceover in an unnecessary way.
The crawl does it very succinctly and quickly. It's one of the best crawls. It's not at a stupid fucking angle. Emperor Palpatine doesn't just come back to life.
Mike.
And I see a lot of Terminator 2 in this movie too, of like, no, we're just gonna go.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you like the base information, like the paragraph at the start of a history textbook chapter that you're not gonna read anyway, and then we're gonna fucking go, and hopefully you can catch on. And we just said in the first segment, the intro, that we didn't. Like it's really difficult, but man, when you finally do, it's so much more rewarding.
Especially and I know this was like the very beginning of nerd culture, but like nerds like to dig in. If you put everything on a platter, fuck that. So the interpretation, the chewing on it, and reinterpretations, that's why it owns most of the internet. The internet is Blade Runner.
Another thing I think he does really well in terms of world building is, I'm not going to give you fashion and styles and architecture that actually looks cool now. I'm going to give you the stuff that makes you feel like you're in a different time and place, because when you look at the fashions, you don't think they look cool. You think they look stupid because they're not the fashions of your time. And I'm going to give you architecture that looks like oppressive and really weird. I mean, like the intricate ziggurats and like temples.
Somebody with pyramids and shit.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. Like all
the
that
kings
stuff
are in the pyramid as all of the slaves are way far below.
Yeah, and it
Ryan.
it looks so ostentatious and awful, but that helps us really understand that it's a different place than the place we live in, rather than it looks like the cool, slick version of now that we hope for.
It's the distant future of 2019, and you really
could
feel
you
that.
imagine?
If you take a far superior film that had clearly seen Blade Runner, Demolition Man, that the whole time they're thinking about what looks cool.
Yeah.
And
so then when we watch it now, it doesn't look cool because it looks cool. It only looks cool to your
looks
1993
90s cool,
sensibilities. But what looks enduringly cool about Blade Runner is it really went out there and made its own like fashion and style. It by drawing on a lot of like historical fashions like the 40s and stuff like that. But it really made it its own, and now it does kind of look cooler than it did when it first came out, because we associate the movie with such coolness.
I want to fill in that blank real quick, which is genre blending. And I think that's such a common thing now, the blank beats blank. It's such a easy way to pitch a project. And it's not even like as specific as like Mean Girls meets Back to the Future, a movie I would definitely watch. But his whole thing of not in a hacky way, doing, if we take Alien, it's a sci-fi movie, but that's a horror movie, And
Right.
if like Thelma and Louise
Jaws meets
is
And a workplace drama.
yeah, and Thelma and Louise is a best friend. It's a road trip movie, but it's a
And
western.
Yeah.
And this movie being a sci-fi movie, clearly, right? It takes place in the future. There are flying cars. That is sci-fi. That's how sci-fi
Boom.
works.
Sci-fi. Check.
And it's not. It's noir or neo-noir, or however you want to feel it. Like, this was every time that you watch
And
Blade
it's a
Runner,
monster movie too. Like it spent so much time being like a old school Doctor, like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari style, like just monster movie.
right? But every time you watch Blade Runner, it gets this title. There's this new thing that you're watching, and for me this time, I couldn't shake the fact that it was a movie filmed in the 80s that takes place in the 2020s that shot like the 1940s, and that's two 40-year gaps in between. If we're gonna make a movie about the 40 years in the future, we're gonna shoot it like 40 years in the past. The neo-noir of this film is what makes it successful more than the sci-fi of the film.
Oh yeah, and it's something I don't at least remember picking up on or really focusing on the first time I watched it. But this is like, I recently rewatched Chinatown. I've been reading a lot of noir books. Like this is my jam right now. So the whole time I was like, oh, he's gonna detect us some shit. And
Specifically, Southern California, Los Angeles noir.
Yes, and the big
Yeah.
mystery of the replicants and all that, he is solving that. And yeah, Southern California noir is a very specific thing. Versus I guess there's small town noir, but. The amount of paranoia that he doesn't trust anybody, even who I think Edward James Olmos is his best friend or former partner. But when we first meet him, he's trying to arrest Deckard, it seems. Like
I feel like he's like a magical creature that pops in when the movie needs it,
nobody
but not
else
in a
can
bad
see
way.
him.
Well, honestly, the question of who Gaff is, like, that's a really big question. How he represents himself is as working with the police department, but he's clearly some sort of agent that runs Deckard, that like keeps Deckard on pace and keeps him doing what he's supposed to be doing. He clearly, like, I would say
works for Tyrell.
Ultimately he's from the Tyrell Corporation. He pretends to be associated with the police, but he's always like coming to get Deckard and bring him to go talk to the police chief, but
Yeah.
it's always like, who's actually in charge here? And the whole ending where Gaff puts the unicorn down, he like runs and operates Deckard. I don't think he's associated with the cops at all, which is why he's so fancy.
Interesting.
And like, yeah, and I mean, there's something up with his eyes too. His eyes are very clear. I think it's supposed to be that he's got like some sort of augments or something. I don't think there's any way in which he is a detective or a cop.
The way I take that was that, like, how is he clearly not a replicant? You know,
He's
like,
definitely not a replicant.
I'm gonna make sure nobody thinks that I'm a replicant because I have these bright blue eyes. There was also another thing too with all of the melding of the cultures, and is he the most melded? You know, like we have a Latino guy who has like a lot of Asian qualities to
He's doing the
his
origami.
and like there's like
He
eye
speaks like
makeup.
a street Japanese, like.
The
It's
makeup
not-
and the facial hair sort of is like an attempt to look more Asian.
Yeah.
But then he's also very like, I would say there's also like a hyper Europeanness to his dress and the fact that like the affectation of having the cane. Like he's a melange, right? He's like the whole thing.
Right.
He's all of it coming together. And for most of the movie, you're like, this guy doesn't even speak English. And then it turns out in the end, he
totally
does.
does. That's I didn't even put because so often like Angel Batista in Dexter dresses so different from the rest of the
Wait, hold on. Dexter reference.
Mike.
Give the point.
from the rest of the force. Like I thought there's so often there's like, well, you could have a movie all about, I'm sorry, what is Almost's name in this? Gaff. You could have a movie all about him because him and Deckard are both in different ways against what the rest of the system seems to be like. But Deckard blends in stylistically, but if Gaff walks down the street, it looks like he peacocks a little more.
Right.
I think this story basically is the story of the first time they have a replicant go out and get replicants, and Gaff's job is to make sure that the replicant that they're having do that does it correctly. And so he's always there to like help instruct him and give him the next mission that he's supposed to do, basically.
Through origami.
I
Through
definitely want
origami.
to talk about that. Not now. But shit, I lost my train. Oh, going back to the Ridley Scott of all and the what did you say, melange of Gaff is, I think the smartest thing Ridley Scott did was look to the future and be like, well, Asia's going to be whether it's China, Japan, they're going to be superpowers and we're going to be super blended. And so many things took, like that's part of that genre defying of cyberpunk is everybody after that was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I bet the West won't rule forever and we should blend some stuff.
Did this create cyberpunk?
Yeah, I mean, it very much, cyberpunk existed before it, but this very much married a style to it. But it is very much at like the origin of cyberpunk. I don't think that really. I think cyberpunk comes out of a series of short stories.
Is it Gibson?
Yeah, Gibson writing Neuromancer. But before that, he wrote Johnny Mnemonic, and he wrote a bunch of other like things that really I think you would say that that's the origin of cyberpunk. But the way cyberpunk gets like fused with this movie and with its aesthetic, its music. And then it's like basic themes, and the fact that it gets very neo-noir here, I think like the two things are basically could be said to start existing at the same time because of how much Blade Runner really grabbed a hold of cyberpunk and turned it into something.
I read a story that you guys better not have read because we're doing trivia later, but that Gibson went to see Blade Runner and walked out 20 minutes in, said, fuck, and had to go and scrap everything he had for his new novel, Neuromancer. Because
Really?
It was just all like it was the movie that he was watching.
I mean, it's the central questions are very much the same, which is like what makes a thing suddenly like a sentience? What suddenly makes if you make something so complicated and it becomes self-aware, how can you then say that that thing is not a human or not?
What is life?
Yeah, exactly. What is life? Yeah,
Which is a fun, just theoretical thing we can talk about right now, and it's not in society.
What is life is a totally normal question for a human to ask, but when a robot asks it, you look like an idiot robot. Like what?
We should murder you right now, robot.
I know
hacking
the answer
question.
to this already, but for the listeners at home, please tell me, what is life?
And on that note, we're gonna take a break. But when we come back, Vangelis does he belong on the Mount Rushmore of 1982 music? Let's find out.
Mount Rushmore!
You know what that sound means because it had words in the sound. It's time for Mount Rushmore.
I think Ryan might be a replicant.
Tonight is the music of 1982. Now, guys, we have a mixtape for 1982 that we have not recorded yet. Are we excited for this mixtape?
Yes. I think it's going to be very specific. I think our goal for the mixtape should be almost the anti-Rushmore of like find the great songs that won't necessarily be on this head.
So we're going to put 4 pieces of shit on here and then make a good mixtape.
Big pieces of shit. Yeah, I think there is salvageable music from 82. I'm just not totally sure it's the music that people in 82 were really hyped on, with one big exception.
And Greg, as the challenger, you're going first. What is that exception?
Yeah, this is a little unfair. This is like when you got the first pick in the season thing for the Patreon listeners. But a little album called Thriller came out in 1982. Can you believe it? Sort of changed music. And you could honestly go a couple ways with this, but I'm going to go with the conventional way and put Michael Jackson's head up there. Non-controversial figure, Michael Jackson. This album is
Wait, of all the action figure heroes, all the different types of Michael Jackson, you're choosing non-controversial as the type
I'm choosing
of...
non-controversial.
Right.
So not the one where he's dandling his baby over a balcony or one where he's like
Classic
actively
Jacko.
testifying. No, mine is the one from the Thriller video.
With the
Where
eyes.
everyone's just like, we love you, Michael. You're so great.
Yellow
But
eyes.
the nice one. Thriller. I mean, there's nothing I need to say about it. Everybody has their own personal relationship with Thriller, and that's very important.
I don't know. We try on this show to not talk about certain things. We've never done a Woody Allen movie in any year. We keep denying Mike when he nominates Harvey Weinstein for the Pop Filter Hall of Fame every time.
Look at his career.
I just think we're on the right side of that one, Ryan.
Okay, I mean, we do because we're biased. Mike disagrees. Is Thriller so big that it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I mean, Thriller's so big, I did it at my wedding, which should be a pure non-sexual harassment, non-sexual crimes related area.
Doesn't Kanye have a line like that? He's like, do you really think he touched them kids? I mean, that guy came out with Thriller. Like, obviously I'm butchering the line, but he basically makes that exact point. He's like, yeah, but it's Michael, like his music is so I don't know. I mean, the policy of the show definitely is to steer clear of But the new thing with Michael Jackson is they're like, that's fucking racist that like he got railroaded and I just don't know. I've never really like looked into any of this. I believe Victims, racism's wrong. Thriller's a great album. I'm very confused. I don't think you should like
Please
as an
vote
adult
for
have
me.
kids over for sleepovers at your house.
Do you know what other shows do? Is they say Thriller was great and don't fucking wade into the bog of despair.
Good call.
I'm just pre-admonishing myself.
Good move.
Michael Jackson is on the list. Mike.
Yeah, I guess so many that are equally as big and clearly.
Yeah, right. There's no step down
Yeah,
here.
it's I mean.
Oh, and by the way, I have a bonus answer. If anybody says the thing that is in my head, that's 5 extra points.
In
No,
1982,
that's too many. Three
Holy
extra
cow!
points.
No, yeah, but time out. It
Yeah,
can't be
that's crazy.
5.
That's
like,
crazy, man.
It has to, like 3, right?
Three
Ryan?
extra points.
5 is game ending.
1982, New Wave was huge and one of the biggest albums of that era to come out. That people didn't like mock all the time. It wasn't only a punchline, but her name was Rio, and
Yes.
sometimes people are hungry like a wolf. It's
Oh,
Duran
yeah.
Duran.
Yeah.
Both of them?
Both Durans. I want a two-faced Duran style.
Have we mocked Duran Duran? I feel like maybe there's been like trash talked on Duran Duran, but aren't they actually kind of a cool band?
Yes, and
I
this-
think
this
Rio
whole
and
album
Hungry
is
Like
awesome.
a Wolf are incredible songs. I wish I could say the name of the last song. Mike, can you say it?
Hungry like the wolf.
Greg?
Hungry Like Wolf?
Wolves are hungry.
I can't say it.
Oh yeah, because you have trouble saying wolf.
I-
Because you say wolf.
Wolf.
I could say
Hungry
golf.
like the wolf.
I could say
'Cause
golf.
I'm hungry
If it-
like a wolf.
If it's hungry like a golf, I can say that word. But
Right.
I don't know what it is.
Can we just admit that if you were 7, that would be adorable?
Yeah. I'm hungry like
Mommy,
a
look at the
wolf.
wolf.
I feel like I live most of my life in that if I was 7,
Yeah.
this would be adorable.
It would be like, yeah, inappropriate. Yeah.
I also want to talk about is the album called Rio?
Yeah.
It's called Rio, yeah.
That album cover. What were those pictures? Why
Oh,
why
shit.
were they everywhere in 1982?
like they were always at like stylists.
Or nail
like,
salons.
Yeah, once
yeah.
again,
Yeah.
salons in the 90s.
It was just a hip style. It
And
was
Duran Duran
fashionable.
was like on the cutting edge of that. So,
Yeah.
Mike, I hate to be a Greg about this and just put everything on the mountain, but you're on the mountain.
Mike.
Yes.
Gorgon.
That's the only time Mike has not been upset when somebody is being a Greg about something. Sus. Okay. Wow. It's we're getting like
Is it Slim Pickens
This is-
now?
dangerous territory. Well, it's just dangerous territory. Like a misstep here, saying a really dumb
Yeah.
one would just like open the door for Mike in a way where he would just, I know, saunter through. Such a saunterer.
Or it could give you 3 points.
Okay, how about this? I got to go with this. Music is also a lifestyle. It's also about building a brand. 1982, before he was in Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne was performing on stage, and someone threw what he believed to be a rubber bat on stage. He picked the bat up, and he did what you would do when you see a rubber bat, which is you would try to bite its head off. And he bit the head off a live bat, which is wrong and messed up, and it's weird that somebody threw a bat at him even. But that idea of him like biting the head off that bat turned him into like beyond being a metal god, like the most hardcore, awesome metal artist of all time. Even though he's like questionably talented. I don't know.
You
Yeah,
can
I
draw
mean-
a direct line of him biting the head off the bat and him 30 years later going, Sharon! All over
Totally.
MTV.
Oh yeah, man. They played that up constantly. He also had an album come out this year, and he was going to be like Dio is leaving Black Sabbath in '82, and so he's just about to join Black Sabbath.
Okay. People who are rock fans, like younger kids, if there's any young kids out there listening to this and are also fans of rock, do not read books about rock and roll because you will find out all the details that ruin. Like, Ozzy eating the head off a bat was so legendary.
Very cool.
Also, that green M&M story, or is it green Skittles? Like, what?
no, Green M&M, right?
Green. That what a bummer that story actually turned out to be. It's just a really smart logistic thing that they did.
There's nothing more rock and roll than like super clever logistics, though, if you think about it.
I'm gonna put Ozzy on the maybe pile. Mike.
All right. I thought Greg was building on because it's all about a brand. It's all about how you look. And people can name like 2 of this guy's songs. But he was so big and his fashion was so big. And he took, I think, a lot of the punk aesthetic and made it okay for normies and suburban moms to be like, oh, well, Billy Idol's all right.
Yeah.
Because he sprung out of Generation X, right? They had broken up and he went solo in 1982. Billy Idol's self-titled album came out, and it had White Wedding on it, and it had Dancing with Myself on it. And this guy is,
The Donna's song?
the Donna song.
Huh.
He covered the Donnas.
That's crazy.
The least punk song of all time, Dancing with Myself.
Well,
Oh my god.
He Good Charlotte did so much years before they did. I remember my aunt being like, "This Good Charlotte, they're a fun boy band," and then she saw them and like, "Do you know what they look like?"
These are not gentlemen.
And that is Billy Idol. But he gave the 80s the aesthetic.
Okay, I hear that, and so I'm going to put a little plus next to his name on the maybe pile. Greg?
Okay. Oh man, really in it now, Greg. Okay. In 1982, part of what we're trying to get on the mountain is good heads. We want a good head, right? So he's got a good head on his shoulders.
Good head.
Very, recognizable head. Stevie Wonder, Ebony and Ivory came out in 82, which was a big song. And also Stevie Wonder's original Musicarium, which was like a greatest hits album of his. Basically all the music that had made Stevie Wonder such a big name. Stevie Wonder is my 1982 pick to win, Ryan.
All right, after this, Mike, it's speed round. What do you got?
This is not huge at the time, but huge in certain circles, especially in Southern California, and would go on to be one of the most influential albums to ever come out. This little hardcore band, they were in the scene, and they're like, we'll make one more album because our lead singer's going to college. The Descendants' Milo Goes to College came out, and every band Ryan has ever liked would not exist without this album.
Is this the guy who sold Sprite in the early 90s?
He sold Sprite in the early 90s.
Was it? Remember that guy who was Fido Dido? Is that the same as Milo?
Oh
Yeah, Fido Dido is Milo.
Fido Dido and Milo look very similar.
Even if you don't know Descendants, you know their logo of the little cartoon of Milo, which is what I would say we're putting on the mountain if they made it up there.
Yeah. I love the pick, Mike. I'm just going to have to maybe it for now. Speed round. Here we go, Greg.
All right. Pink Floyd came out with the Wall, the movie. And finally, we have Pink Floyd as what we need, which is just one guy, Bob Geldof, as Pink Floyd.
The
and we
Boomtown
just
Rats
put that
guy?
one head up. Yeah, we could just put that head up on the mountain.
All right, Mike.
Toto, with their album from that Africa song is on, came out in the 82.
All right.
Could I just do one more?
Yeah.
Johnny Cash released his 68th album in 82, and he hosted Saturday Night Live with musical guest Elton John, and they both
hilarious.
performed 2 songs.
Johnny Cash. When I think of 1982, I think of Johnny Cash.
But
He released his 68th album, Mike. It should be
That's
mentioned.
crazy.
Mike, you got one more?
Flock of Seagulls. Come on. If you also, that's the mockable part of 82. Looks wise.
Hair-wise.
The bonus person who nobody mentioned. So
Ryan.
Takes so long.
is Phil Collins, arch enemy of the show, just a piece of shit person, but he did release an album in 1982, and I was hoping he would make it on here. Your
Mike.
1982 Music Rushmore
Mike.
is
Oh.
Michael Jackson, Duran Duran, Milo from the Descendants, and Billy Idol. When we come back, more Blade Runner. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com. And it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show, that's Movie of the Year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review, bye! Let's talk about Sex Baby, specifically in the movie Blade Runner. It's a dark film about a dark city and a bunch of terrible people, but what do we make of the sex scene? Let's start with the sex scene. And then let's get to the just the sexuality of everyone else in the movie.
Okay, so This is like the part of the movie that I feel very uncomfortable with. So she wants to storm out. Rachel wants to storm out. And he runs over, and he's got such a mean look on his face, and he slams the door in her face so she can't leave. And then he shoves her, a two-handed shove, into like the window of his apartment, and it looks like it hurts. And then he steps forward, and he looks, again, so angry, and he's looking at her with intensity. And then he grabs her, I think, by the arms, and then eventually they kiss, and eventually she's like, she doesn't say, I think she says, I want you to touch me, but she says, I want your hands on me.
Well, before she says that, he says, say kiss me. Say do this.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, wait, we know she's a robot. I don't know the laws of robotics. I don't have Wood and Harrison Ford telling me how everything works here. Is she have to listen to him? Like, it felt very coercive.
Yeah, and it's like he knows that he does know that she is a replicant, and it's his job to hunt down and kill replicants. And at first he seems very uncomfortable about her presence because it's like, yeah, I mean, it's his job to retire these folks. But then also it's clearly like he's also very attracted to her. And
Sean Young, you're going to be attracted to her.
But it's just that's like a weird starting point. And then for the scene to be, I don't know. The other thing is though, but like, is this by 82 standards? Did there always have to be resistance from women in sex, or otherwise it was improper or something?
I didn't think about that. That is an awful, gross question.
No,
Or
it's like an awful
answer-
thing to even have to talk about. But it in a lot of
maybe
in
it's
a lot
cold
of
outside of relationships.
kind of, yeah, where like there has to be this like pantomimed, or at least
We
in
don't
the
want a
world of
slutty
fiction.
robot.
Well, I think that there's so many things going on here, and it's a lot to parse out. And I think as a 2022 audience member, what you want is for Harrison Ford to die, and die because he did this. You know, like there should be punishment for this. Like you can show men treating women like this, but almost like going back to the code that predates movie ratings, then they have to have their comeuppance. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have that. He actually is totally fine at the end. They actually run away together at the end, but
because they love each other.
But there's so many things going on. Of one, a loner trying to talk to a person, essentially an incel, trying to talk to another quote unquote human being. He's very bad at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Harrison or Rick, but both of them are very bad at relating to other human beings because of whatever. And then also the treatment of this lower form. Now, what is the lower form? Is it replicant or is it woman or But
Woman
like,
Clint.
I'm not sure exactly why he's doing this, other than I'm better than you and I get to. I think that's the big thing, is I get to, and I don't know any other option.
I think two things I think about it is, one, in the performance of it, is he did the charming version of this with Carrie Fisher already. So he went, I don't want to be compared to
Mike.
Han Solo. And then right after this scene, it cuts to the city skyline and zooms in on a giant ad where it's a geisha. And so it really feels like Scott is going, if you don't get what I was just saying she is to him, I will zoom in on a geisha.
But Daryl Hannah is a pleasure bot.
Mm-hmm.
So on Mars or whatever, the 4 robots that escaped, 3 of them are like shovelers or Mars diggers, and one was a pleasure bot. So we know that they exist, and he's choosing to find this one who, first of all, believes herself to be a human.
Right.
And we have to get to that, of like finding out that you're not. And then also, instead of going to a pleasure bot and being able to pay for it to do whatever I want, I'm going to treat you like this.
It also reminded me of the 3 Days of the Condor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she is weirdly his captive, not just because he literally slams the door when she tries to run away, but because, like, the situation of her having fled the corporation and gone to him, like, he is supposed to retire her for doing that. He's later told to go and retire her. And so, he has her at such a disadvantage, not just because he's putatively human, not just because, like, it's she has nowhere to go,
Yeah,
and
he's
he
the
uses
authority.
that as like a leverage against her. It feels like.
I know. I saw a bunch of people online saying this scene should have been cut. If they're gonna make 17 fucking versions of this movie, then cut this scene or trim it or do something.
Including one that comes out in 2007.
And yeah, and at that point, we all know. But like, what it's saying about 40s films and 80s society, and protecting about like the robots of the 20s future, going back to that 40-year gaps between before and after the 80s. And not to mention the fact that like, if you were about to like Rick, he keeps doing things that make sure that you hate him. So there is nothing to actually root for in this rainy bullshit town.
If I found out this was cut, I'd be like, Ridley Scott's a pussy. It makes me uncomfortable. That is good. Art shouldn't be all fluffy and good. And if you want this movie to be art, and I think it is, I think it needs to have some sharp edges here. And he is not his Indiana Jones persona. He is not his Harrison Ford persona. He's not a lovable scoundrel. This guy's pretty gross. And I think this scene's super important to that and to the movie in general.
And like the Robo folks are weird. They're like, they do weird things, and you're supposed to, I think of them as monsters at the same time that you think of them as victims, and he is one of them, right? And this is one of the things he does that it's like that is kind of monstrous, and that keeps us from being able to fully connect to him, because we're supposed to feel the push and pull with him of like, we don't like you, but because the camera follows you, we just keep giving you the benefit of the doubt, basically, even though you are doing a pretty awful thing that the movie is morally opposed to.
Which, is that different than Humphrey Bogart? Just following him, we like him, and he's the main.
I think it's very much the same. I mean, like, it's not comfortable to watch Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in scenes together. It's not comfortable.
Who is it's 30 years young, like the 30-year age gap.
She's like 19 or something, right? In that, like, and you feel that as the viewer, especially as the modern viewer, it feels really uncomfortable. And so, is he replicating that, or can you could he do more to comment on that without just reproducing it in the way that he did? I wonder.
I want to get to the other horniest couple in the movie, which is the third act. It is Roy and Rick.
Chris?
No.
Oh.
Roy and Rick's fight, to me, they just keep stripping clothes off and getting closer and closer. What are we doing here?
Yeah, Roy, when he decides to go full monster mode, he strips to his boxers and shoves a screw through his hand and goes, all right, now it's villain time, bitches.
Well, I think in part what's going on there is like he is actively dying from the very beginning of the movie, and I think he gets loopy near the end. And I think because it's supposed to be we pity him at the same time that we fear him. So he's like, the things he's doing that don't make any sense are because he's so weird. And I think the weird pain, the driving the nail through the hand, it makes him Christ-like, obviously, by having that wound. And at the same time, I think the pain keeps him centered, and so it's like the nature of pain in terms of like keeping us on track and everything. But yeah, I think the reason he strips out of all his clothes maybe is to build this sexual tension, but it also is just because he's like not working right anymore. His brain is no longer good. It's turning into mush. They can't figure out a way to keep that from happening, and so he's just actively turning into soup. In
a perfectly choreographed third act, a fight in the dark. There's blues. We're barely lit by the neon around us. So much of it is what we can't see because of all the shadows and the darkness. And these two alpha males are in a lot of ways performatively trying to go after each other and act like the man they think they're supposed to be. Roy Batty pushing his head through the ceramic tile will always be one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my entire life.
Well, I also he did the move already, and it's clear Scott, used everything he learned and did in '79 with Alien and used it here when Harrison is up against the wall and is terrified. The hand going through, we're like, all right, Roy knows things through walls is scary. And then he goes, I'll double down. And he does it. And it's so silly. And it feels like something from Pee Wee Herman more than from a horror movie.
Or Spaceballs, like literally watching Spaceballs in the movie Spaceballs. Like Roy has like a manager in his ear saying like, all right, Roy, that was a good scene. Here's what you need to do for the next one.
I definitely do think that is an area in which you see the mental breakdown of the character. Like he can't decide what's a good idea anymore, what's intimidating. And
is that the case with Ridley Scott too?
Yeah, because I think throughout this movie there is a tremendous sense of the carnivalesque, right? The idea of the topsy-turvy nature of this new place. Pris is like a acrobat. JP Sebastian's house is full of like clown imagery, right? So like everybody is absurd, but there is still like the life and death stakes going on, and so I think that like the end of the movie has to be absurd. And if you think about the source material too, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Like this movie keeps all the cool things about it, but it also manages to keep some of the zaniness without copying it over one for one. It's a zany novella, and the movie captures that. And I think things like Rucker Hauer pounding his head through that wall helps to remind us that that air of carnivalesque is like still present even at the end of the movie.
Trivia.
Oh, fuck. I did not see that coming. I thought I was really interested in what you guys were saying. But apparently, it's trivia time. You guys know the rules. I'm going to ask you guys a question. It will probably be about Blade Runner, but
We'll see.
not necessarily. You respond by saying your name. Please wait till the question is done. Otherwise, I will not call on you. Blade Runner trivia, the first. What did Ridley Scott use to make it look like characters had light in their eyes?
Greg, little red lights.
I'm going to give it to you. It was light.
Yeah.
This movie was a flop thanks to what 1982 blockbuster?
Greg, E.T.
That is correct.
Greg.
What is E.T. short for?
Mike.
Greg,
Mike?
Extraterrestrial.
Incorrect.
Greg. He's got little stubby legs.
He's got those tiny little legs.
Shit.
Yeah.
Greg.
Philip K. Dick claimed after seeing Harrison Ford on set, he is more Deckard than I ever imagined. It has been incredible. Deckard exists. What's so odd about Philip K. Dick saying this?
Greg.
He's
a dick.
I do like using the word dick, but that's incorrect. Mike?
He had a son named Deckard?
Incorrect. The answer is Harrison Ford is fucking terrible in this movie. I don't know why anybody would appreciate his performance. Number 5.
Because I think he's supposed to be terrible. He's a robotic performance because he's an android.
No, he's a bad actor in this movie. Straight up. Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Greg. Yeah.
Incorrect. Mike?
No.
They don't.
Mike.
Nobody dreams of sheep, electric or otherwise.
Are androids who wear masks and get vaccinated dreaming of electric sheeple?
Greg.
No,
nobody dreams of sheeple.
Incorrect.
Mike.
Mike?
Yeah?
Yeah, they are.
Mike.
Oh my god.
The title of the movie was taken from what Alan Norse book?
Mike.
Blade
Runner.
That is correct.
Oh shit.
There's a guess.
In the book, what does a Blade Runner do?
Greg. He hunts down people who left his tribe.
Incorrect. Mike?
He does sprints on ice.
Incorrect. I love when you guys overthink things. He sells illegal surgical equipment. So the title makes sense of that one, not this one.
Yeah. And then no one ever takes a stab at explaining it.
Ridley Scott toyed with the idea of having the movie take place in San Angeles. What movie eventually did take place in San Angeles? Mike?
Volcano.
Incorrect.
Greg. Demolition Man.
Demolition Man!
Yeah.
Sean Young was essentially kicked out of Hollywood when she got pissed about losing what role?
Mike.
Catwoman.
Mike.
Came on to talk shows dressed as Catwoman. That did not work for her.
Oh, ouch.
What cable channel did Ridley Scott, credit for reviving Blade Runner after its disappointing original run?
Greg. Sci-fi.
Incorrect.
Mike. HBO?
Incorrect. I'll just go. It's MTV. Basically,
Whoa.
all of the directors that were making videos learned how to make videos by watching Blade Runner, and people went back to watch it. Ridley Scott originally wanted Harrison Ford to wear a 1940s-style hat for the movie. What made him change his mind?
Greg. Harrison Ford said he wouldn't do it.
Close.
Mike. He looks so much sexier with rain dripping right down his face.
Incorrect. It was Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
As soon as I guessed, I was like, oh, wait, now it's the other one.
This movie is set in 2019. Are you surprised they got it so wrong and actually created a nicer, more pleasant world than we really have?
Mike.
Greg.
Mike.
Yes.
Yes, that is
I would
correct.
much rather live in here. Did you see how neighborly he is when he's buying the noodle bowls? Everybody's just, I love it.
I've heard Blade Runner called a liberal dream because all the cultures are meshed together and everybody's living happily. There's a spinner, one of the cars, on permanent display at the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle, Washington. Deckard's red spinner, however, is on display at what museum in Titusville, Florida?
Mike. The Trump Presidential Library Museum.
Incorrect.
I have no guess.
It's the Cop Museum.
Oh,
Why is that surprising?
Mike.
Greg.
Mike?
I didn't know cops enjoyed museums.
Incorrect.
Greg. Because Deckard wasn't a cop in the News of a Bounty Hunter.
That is true, but the answer is you wouldn't think Florida had museums. In the movie Blade Runner 2049, we're told Rachel's serial number. What is it?
Mike.
8675309.
8675309.
Incorrect.
Greg. 69-420. Woo!
Nice.
I don't even care if I'm wrong.
It's
Those-
N7FAA52318.
Oh, of course.
And
Of
finally,
course.
how famous was the actor who played Gaff at the time of the movie's release?
Greg.
Greg?
Not famous.
Okay. Mike?
Medium famous. Almost famous.
Oh, no.
Mike, right there at the end. He got it. That's a 2 for Mike. Great job, guys. When we come back, more about Blade Runner. Correct. Roger Ebert wondered in his review for the final cut why the Tyrell Corporation didn't just make boxes with arms that did work on Mars, which reminds me of why that classic Star Wars moment where why did they make that robot who was getting burned alive scream and feel pain? Why did Tyrell recreate humans? What is the movies and the characters' relationship with replicants tell us? Are they stand-ins for anything or anyone?
Well, you don't want to fuck a trash receptacle with legs. So
Speak for yourself, bro.
Sex bots work that way. And I think, Tyrell obviously has a god complex. And he, for his own sick
The
validation.
guy living in the pyramid?
Yeah,
Dressed in
weird.
white.
The modern
Dressed
day
all
pharaoh.
in white?
He made a new replicant who doesn't know she's a replicant and didn't tell anybody just so he could personally fuck with her. Like,
That's so fucked up, dude.
so all of this is him being like, it feels better if they feel pain and know that they're going to die in 4 years.
I think it's interesting the way that the movie doesn't address it. And up until you just read that thing from Roger Ebert, I hadn't heard many people talk about it. Like, the movie never actually says why he works so hard to make them indistinguishable from humans. And Tyrell is still at it all throughout the movie. He is like, even though Rachel gets popped as a replicant, he's still trying to figure out how he could make that not happen. And it's like, nobody ever says to him, bro, why are you even doing this? You know how much work you're making for everybody else because we have to like track these down because you make them indistinguishable if you just put a little chip in them. But it's because he gets to do whatever he wants because he is so rich. He's as rich as people like are now, probably even times 10. And so the only thing left to do is become a god and to create life indistinguishable from that of human, you know?
I mean, one of the most, I think, prophetic things about the movies, although I don't know what it was like in the 80s, I do know that like the gap between rich people and poor people is greater than it's ever been in at least American history, maybe ancient history as well, is that you get bored. Like, money only buys so many things.
Yeah.
But the real thing that it buys is power. Look what I can do. Like, just look what I can do. That's the reason for being rich.
It's the same reason The Most Dangerous Game is a story. It's the same reason The Purge, like so many things. It's like I'm rich. Is it Indecent Proposal? Eventually, normal entertainments. Who cares?
Right.
I think the other
Squid
angle
Game.
is JF, which is E.B. Farnham in Deadwood, which means he only plays initialed guys. But he's a big part of it too. But his drive is to cure his own disease. So I think it's instead of doing it to animals, they're now doing these kinds of like, can we push genetics in the replicants to figure out how to solve these issues for humans? And so I don't know if it's
and he's very poor and lonely.
and he's very poor.
And I also think for him it's a game. I mean, I think the fact that he designs toys and that he plays that game with Tyrell, I think it's very much even more than trying to cure Methuselah syndrome or whatever he has. It's an occupation for him. It's an idle thing to do to set his mind on.
And I think he's not. They say he has Methuselah. So does that mean you live 1,000 years?
It means his glands age very
His
quickly.
glands age
It's
quickly. He's
progeria, right?
Jack disease.
Or
but
otherwise known as the disease from the documentary Jack.
He's all
Yeah.
jacked up.
It's reverse double Benjamin Buttons.
but you don't want reverse double Benjamin Button.
That's my favorite dive off a diving board, by the way.
Where you turned into an old baby on the way down. But I also think he's not all there.
Mike.
He's such an interesting, and this actor is always an interesting dude, but he instantly knows the replicants but doesn't care in a way everybody else would. He doesn't know that his toys are creepy, or like what is real and not real is so fluid to him. So he could, where Terrell feels like he's doing despicable things because of they are despicable by nature because he wants to have control. JF is just like, I don't know what's real anymore, and there's something interesting going on mentally with him as well.
I mean, let's be real here. JF exists to be foils for literally every character. He straight up says, "I'm just like you guys in a way, right? I have a cap on my life." But then Tyrell and Rick. Let's talk about him and Rick.
Yeah, and I've tried so hard not to be the from the book guy, but in the book, the character that he's replacing, J.R. Isidore, is like what they call in the book special. And it's supposed to be that he's got a reduced IQ. If you remember Leon in the beginning of the movie, he's like, I've had an IQ test recently. Everybody constantly has to take IQ tests in this world to like prove that they are not so ill affected by the radiation that they need to be like pushed out of the gene pool. And so I think it is very much supposed to be like that he is stupid and off, and it's supposed to blur the line of like, well, like, how about a human who's super dumb or weird? Is that does that not work anymore? Is it because he's a human then it doesn't matter? You know, he has the same sort of outlook at life that the replicants do. He has the same sort of lifespan the replicants do. Why is it just because he has this accident of birth facility where he happened to be born human that gives him the rights that they don't deserve?
And like, is that much different than Rachel? Just happened to be born a replicant, you know, like as far as she knows, as far as anyone knows, she's just a human.
And I think that Deckard in all of this, I think if Deckard is a replicant, this is so dumb, but I think if he's not a Nexus 6 like the rest of them are, he's a Nexus 7, which nobody even knows about yet. And Rutger Hauer alludes to that by saying, by counting down and saying 6 and 7. But so whatever Deckard is, they may have found a way to make it so that he doesn't have that short lifespan anymore. And so that just erodes one more of the sort of partitions between what is replicant and what is human. And the movie over and over and over again is just saying, like, these lines are so blurred, but they're like, they give this universe some sort of meaning to humans. Because if you are, like, stuck on Earth and you have literally no upward mobility, the one thing you can say to yourself is, well, fuck, at least I'm a human, right? At least I'm not a special. At least I'm not a replicant. I'm still a human. And when that breaks down, then there is a little bit of social order the powers that be are afraid will go with it, because you don't have that anymore to cling to.
I think, like, I don't want to compare the replicants to any type of marginalized person, but I do think that's part of what makes the movie so interesting, is that look how happy people are when they can be like, but I'm better than you.
Yeah.
You know, at least I'm normal. And I swear to God, like, let's say this is the 5th time I watched this movie, and maybe if the 5th time I watched it was in 2002, I would feel differently. But in 2022, I know that, like, they're clearly the villains, but they're not to me that much, you know, like watching it now, it's just like, you're to be dehumanized as often as you are, to be called not human, and your only way of dealing with that to, like, change the future is to rise up in violence.
And I mean,
it makes sense to me now. Yeah,
they're very specifically worried about one thing. I mean, they don't even just want their freedom. The thing they're very specifically worried about is that they all have this, like, 2-year clock where they're going to be dead. And what is more human than to be in anguish over the fact that you will one day cease to exist, that you yourself will disappear like tears in the rain? Like, that's the most human thing there is. And so they have that experience. So that is enough of a touchstone to be human, really.
Because bulldozers don't have that, but also birds don't have that, dogs don't have that, you know?
Yeah, to sit in contemplation of your own mortality and the mortality of everyone that matters to you, the Pris in your life, the Leon in your life, to know that you will either extinguish in front of them or they will perish in front of you, that is, like, almost too much to bear. And then to have that all shrunk down into, like, a 4-year timeline.
Why did Tyrell do that to them?
Because he doesn't see them as being as important
And
as
maintain
what they
control.
as what their output is. Their output is all that's important to him. So if he can amp up their output, it doesn't matter what else he has to.
I don't. More rhetorical. Why give them the knowledge and the fear of dying is what I was saying more than the why do it to you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, ultimately, Terrell's exercise is ultimately the most important step that we could have in capitalism, which would be you create a product that is itself a consumer. And we see this realized most fully in Blade Runner 2049, where K is not just a product, but he actually then buys products. And so if you can create your own long-lived products that then turn around and actually buy things from you, that's like a breakthrough in capitalism, really.
That's Philip Morris getting 12-year-olds on cigarettes.
Or having a 3-man podcast that has 3 listeners and it's the 3 of us. Like, that's what we did.
Yeah, but we're doing really
Centipede
well in that
podcast.
demo.
We love our shit.
For the replicant thing, I remember watching it the first time, the theatrical cut, and being like, yeah, Deckard is a fucking replicant. This one, I feel like, I guess there's... Watching this version, I can see how it could be an argument. He doesn't have the eye thing. It's not...
He does have the eye thing, though.
Does he have the eye thing?
He has
The
it. There's
final
one
cut?
Yeah, there's one very famous shot. There's a shot where, okay, so this is why, in part, I think he's not just another Nexus 6. I think he doesn't have the eye thing as much because he is like less of a replicant, or he's a more advanced version. But there is a scene, there's an actual shot, and you can look it up if you want, where her eyes are glowing orange, and his eyes in the background, unfocused, are also glowing orange.
Oh, shit.
To me, it is a definitive answer, but it also the fact that it's blurred in the background is a sign that it's not important really that much whether he is or not. We get so laser focused on the answers to these questions that we forget that it's the questions that are the important part of it. You know, it doesn't matter if he is or isn't, because that distinction between being a replicant and not being a replicant is not real. It's not a real thing. And so we don't have to then get caught up in that. We know what Deckard is. He is the things that we see him do, right? He's not one of these things or the other. And the line is so blurred, but also at the same time, the definitive answer is definitely yes, because he's got the orange eyes in that one part.
Yeah, I said earlier that every time I watch it, it's for a different thing. And that's never been one. I don't fucking care. I think it reduces the movie to this M. Night Shyamalan like knockoff. Like, I do agree that the question is the thing, not the answer is the thing. But this time when I'm watching it, I was like, what if he's human? What if he's replicant? You know, and like, I don't think it changes as much as people want it to. They just want, you know, it's like mystery
It's
box
Schrodinger's
shows
character.
all over again.
He's both. I mean, he is both a human and he is both a replicant. Like, it's both of those realities at the same time. And then what does it change when it's one or the other? It's both and it's neither, and it's, you know, it's definitive, but it's not.
I mean, I tried to watch it like, how crazy would it be if he's hunting down his own people? Like, the movie doesn't need that answer to make it seem like that. The movie does a good job of making replicants feel like people, and that's
They
where
are
the
people,
horror
yeah.
comes from.
Because I don't feel like
and
they're
what
the
I like
villains
about it,
at
though,
all.
is that they're not.
What'd you say, Mike?
I said I don't feel like they're the villains at all in that way, because we were told they slaughtered a ship, but we don't see it, so that emotionally doesn't hit us. And then those were probably racist assholes anyway. And the only people we see them go after really are like Tyrell or the guy who's hunting them down. So I'm like, yeah, Team Replicant all the way.
Which is crazy for you to say because you are a staunch robot hater.
I know. I'm growing in my older age.
But I do think the movie goes out of its way to show that there is something different about them and that it is very creepy. Like, I do think they come off as very creepy and, like, prone to sort of violence and prone to just be like, this guy is bothering us, let's just kill him.
I mean,
know?
Real quick, because we have to get out of here, but there's a lot of ways to kill a man. I know how to do like 1,000 of them with this pen right here in my hand, but he chooses. And eyes are a big thing in this movie. We talked about the glowing eyes, and then we spent a lot of time with somebody we haven't talked about tonight, which is the eye maker, like the very specific eye maker. And then
Just got a star in Hollywood.
yeah, congratulations to him. Also in Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
And then, but when Batty, the movie's Batty, I still remember how that is the case, goes to kill him, he doesn't, there's so many more humane ways to do it, and he specifically gouges his eyes and squeezes his head till he's dead. And
Boss.
that seems villainous to me.
Yeah, well, or at least monstrous, right? I mean, because the killing of Terrell at that point seems like everybody could be on board for it, because he has acted with such impunity and he's hurt so many people, and
It
he
doesn't
doesn't
give a
seem to have.
fuck.
Yeah, but the crushing his head is that part that where you're like, I can't quite fall. I like the movie wants you to feel distaste for the replicants because that's what humans are feeling naturally in the environment of the movie itself. And in the book they talk about this too. Like, it's just there's something off about them, and we see that
uncanny
like
valleying.
yeah, the red eyes, but also the fact they don't quite respond to things correctly. They don't quite have empathy. And I think it's really good because we should not, I think, be able to come away saying the replicants are good and we like them.
Right.
And they had it, right? We should feel like they have a right to exist, but they are very different than us and they are perhaps dangerous to us. And we have to figure out a way to like create understanding between our two very different people rather than dominion of one over the other.
I don't know. Sounds like CRT, critical replicant theory.
That's pretty good.
Mike.
Speed round.
All right, gentlemen, it's speed round time. Here we go. Does ACAB include Deckard? This
Yep.
is 2 weeks in a row where we've watched two 1982 movies about cops in one way or another. Does that include him?
Hell yeah, definitely. I mean, he
Yeah.
like this is the story one way or another of a traitor either to exactly his own kind or a traitor to what we understand by the end of the movie to include his own kind. He's, ultimately he's a man who hunts men. That's wrong.
Brent.
And be honest about this one. How many things have you seen that we wouldn't believe? Like you're sitting next to Harrison Ford, and you gotta list off two things that are gonna die with you. What are they?
I've
Okay.
seen zero. Everything I've seen in my life, you guys would believe so easily.
Well, we were there with literally every great thing that's
Yeah.
happened to you, Mike.
I was a little fat kid, and one time in school, I sat on a swing and it broke, and I fell to the ground. I don't think people would actually believe something that perfect could happen or that miserable could happen to an individual.
I want you to do it and say, I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Fat kids breaking swings.
A little fat boy sitting right through a swing and falling to the sand.
I did say, Greg, what did you see? And you did not see that. Everyone else around you saw that.
I saw their faces, Ryan. You wouldn't believe how delighted somebody can look while mocking you.
Just because of that story,
Mike. Ryan.
we're going to get points. How do the allusions to the paintings of Vermeer help us understand the central thesis of the movie? Vermeer is the guy who would, do, very, tiny eye holes and shit.
Mm-hmm. He
And-
sat in, a
We
camera...
all know.
He sat in something called a camera obscura, and he would basically blend his paints directly into the light. And so he created these hyper realistic paintings through something that is maybe kind of like a cheat in a
Yeah.
way. But still, I don't think you could look at a Vermeer and be like, oh, this guy cheated. It sucks. I hate it.
Bullshit.
These very hyper realistic paintings, and I never noticed until this viewing. When Harrison Ford is looking at that picture, I was like, oh, that reflection kind of reminds me of a Vermeer painting. And then when he goes into the reflection, it is so clearly that girl with the pearl earring, that famous
Yeah.
Vermeer painting. And I had just never noticed that before. And then I thought, wow, when you're talking about blending reality and hyper reality, Vermeer is the perfect one for that, right? Because his paintings were almost like pictures, really. They were almost like photographs, because he's sitting in something called a camera obscura, and he's kind of painting with the light itself. And that, is it real? Is it not real? I thought it was just, God, the perfect, sort of metaphor for what's going on with the rest of the movie.
And how much it matters. You
And
know,
how much it matters. Yeah. And
how much are you going to complain about the fact that Vermeer, quote unquote, cheated, or how this replicant that you're in love with? I'm so worried about,
Dude, don't write us because we said robot,
yeah,
guys.
Yeah,
I
don't be
apologize.
racist.
That she, was born this way and changed, or whatever, how much are you going to be worried about that amount of cheating?
But I did feel like that was sort of this real sub rosa allusion to Vermeer that said so much without occupying any space in the movie. When I was a kid, I wasn't like, what was the deal with that picture? But when you see it as an adult and you're familiar with the work of Vermeer, you're like, oh wow, that's really cool. And it's just this little extra thing sort of thrown in there.
That was a lot of Vermeer talk, Mike. I'm going to have to give Greg a point for that. You understand, yes?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I have a lot to say as well, but this is speed round, so we can just move on.
I know. I appreciate your gamemanship. And finally, we were pretty sure 40 years ago that we were destroying the planet. Should we have maybe done something about that?
Yeah, should we have looked into that?
Create like an Earth Day, like a day where we all think about the Earth. Did that help?
Just think about it. Maybe if we had a superhero where our powers combine, call up Captain Planet.
Captain Planet kind of quit on the job, bro. Like,
Yeah.
obviously it wasn't done. You said you were going to bring pollution down to zero.
It's so...
I don't know how it looks to you guys, but does pollution seem to be down to zero?
And that's an impossible task. Like, you're going to make sure that nobody drops a empty bottle of Coke on the ground. You can't bring pollution down to zero. But
I've been to
make an effort, Captain Planet.
I've been to clean countries you wouldn't believe,
Germany.
where culturally they just put their trash in the pocket till they get home. Which in America, patoo, no, we would not do that.
I'll take that one
country
step further.
sucks.
If I have to patoo, I'll patoo right in my pocket. I'll spit right in
'cause you're
there.
a clean person.
Yeah.
If I put one, I don't flush. But if I put two, you know I'm flushing.
On that note, Blade Runner was nominated for 2 Oscars. It got 0. But how many Moody's will it win tonight? All of them. Let's take a break.
Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad. And perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic. And perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody. Keep watching them
So
movies.
many awards that this movie deserves. But unfortunately, it's only going to get 1 award from each category. I wish I could give it 2. But
What?
I can't do that. I'm going to say an award category. You two are going to nominate things, and then I'm going to give you a point if you're the winner. And we're going to start out with moment. And Greg, I think you ruined this, so you're going to go
Sorry.
first. Moment you know Deckard is a replicant.
And it's to me?
Yes.
Because there is that, I mean, we could get like artsy-fartsy with it or whatever, but I would say that there is one, like, 15-second shot that people take as the definitive proof. Does somebody have the orange eyes? And he does have the orange eyes out of focus, but when you see those eyes, and then you just look at the rest of the clues. But I'll leave some of the clues for Mike.
I'm going to get artsy-fartsy. It's when he goes to kiss Rachel, he turns her head and kisses her ear hole so hard because this dumbass replicant doesn't know which orifice you're supposed to kiss, and it's clearly the mouth. It's so that whole scene's uncomfortable, but the weirdest fucking I don't know, that guy's a robot, and I just fucking Leo DiCaprio memed him.
As you kissed your wife right in the ear
Right
as
in
you
the thick
celebrated.
ear.
Yeah, let's go to Mike.
Mike.
Because who gives a shit? The next one is future tech you wish you had. We didn't do a shopping spree tonight.
I know, dude.
We did trivia instead. I wonder if that was a mistake. Mike, what is the future tech you wish you had?
I want his enhanced computer, which I do feel like Law and Order just went, that's real, and just made everybody think we have it. But
No, I
his
heard about
enhanced-
it.
But not only does he enhance, it goes around corners. That's when we finally get to the woman with the pearl earring. It's because he goes around corners within the camera, and that just seems like it'd be fucking rad.
That's fascinating. He put a picture into a computer, which right there, just like it's a CD-ROM. You just insert it in there, and you're like, computer, you handle this shit. And yeah, to go around corners. This is a bad part for people with epilepsy. He's like, computer, go 4629, and it's like, chick, 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 chick. That part sucks. But
Computer cause half the audience to seize up.
Wow, that's powerful computer.
Greg, what do you got?
So this is future tech we wish we had. I would love, and this is probably ostentatious of me, but I would just love one of those ziggurats. I believe in cyberpunk they're often called arcologies, like huge mega structures that like you would live in, but then also shop in and like maybe never even leave. And the like arcologies that are on display in Blade Runner are just so cool. But yeah, I want that ziggurat.
I don't think that I would ever afford to like own my own ziggurat, but if I'm renting a room in one, I will pay more to get a nice view of the giant pipes that shoot fire out.
Oh man, you gotta when the refineries are flaring, you gotta
Yeah,
see
dude.
that. That's so beautiful.
When
yeah.
you propose to your wife.
Mike, I want one of those computers, but that one's going to Greg. Both of them are classic old technology redone.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a fancy new pyramid. Director signature moment. something that we have been trying to figure out since the dawn of Movie of the Year.
Yeah.
What is Ridley Scott all about? Greg, we're starting with you. And again, this is 6 weeks after a different Ridley Scott movie came out, episode of ours.
All right, here I go. This is what I got. This is definitely like a director's cut scene. Gaff comes and picks him up, and they're going to drive together to the police station. And the length of just driving through the, it's air, hovering through the air of the city, and the music building up, and how long it takes them to get there, and then how like ostentatious the ziggurat is as they get closer and closer and closer to it, and how big the music gets. That is just like a very long, 30, 45, maybe 2-minute scene where all it is world building, and you totally buy it. And I feel like by the time you're done with that, you are just so on board with his project. And so I'm tying it to his amazing world building by just using this very long shot across the city.
And then kind of think that, like, absolutely has to be left on the cutting room floor if you're a producer, right? Like, how are we moving the plot forward? We're not. This is bullshit. Get it out of here. And the kind of thing that he's very clearly interested in.
For the theatrical release, they were like, cut that down to half and have Harrison Ford be talking over the entire thing. Like like they got it from 2 angles.
It doesn't. In that part, is that the part where Harrison Ford brings his bowl of noodles and is just eating it on the road?
Yeah, he's always like, whoa. Anyways, I'm a Blade Runner. It comes from a different book, but that's not important.
Mike, what do you got for Ridley Scott moment?
I was trying to figure out, I didn't want to just say tactileness again, and so like a specific way he does it. And it's in Alien, he definitely does it, I think in Prometheus and here. Maybe in Thelma and Louise with like dust, but he very much likes to obscure stuff with the atmosphere, whether it's rain or smoke or dust. He's like, stuff's going to pop out of it. Like he layers it that way.
So not using the camera or post-production, but like the literal environment so you see. And then like, one of my favorite parts about this movie is you'll be in a big room and one shade will be down, one shade will be half up, one shade will be all the way up. And so he's controlling the light, not through lights of like a set, but lights of the actual environment. He's making it a film noir by shutting the shades of this window.
Right. From the shades of the window from Leon, when Leon v. Deckard, it's all like this fog and smoke that they're coming in and out of.
I just watched a documentary that was a lot about the Bradbury Building, which is where I want to say JF lives, and which is just straight up called the Bradbury Building.
Yeah, like that's not something for the movie. That's not like an illusion.
They didn't futurize that part. Yeah. And Stephanie and I, or my wife and I, who watched the documentary together, we were like, did they ruin that building? What happened? Like, why is there so much dust and rain in there? That sucks. It's a monument. So what they did was they covered the floor in cork. And not only did that shoot dust up when you walked on it, but all the rain got swept up by the cork. So they just swept all that up at the end, and then the building was fine.
Apparently, they told Ridley Scott, they were like, please do not use this building. It's so overused, and it probably will be so overused in the history of cinema. And he's like, yeah, but it looks cool.
The other two from this documentary, which is called L.A. Plays Itself, is the Union Station building, which we see in the beginning, and then his apartment that's like old school Adobe looking, which this is a rare thing because most movies that use that building, and it's in a million movies, will always put villains in there. Because if it's postmodern, that's villainous.
Yeah, it looks like a lair for sure.
I'm going to give that to Mike. I like the whole, not only is the deco of the movie going to make the feel there, but it's also going to help us shoot. Cringiest moment. We've talked about a couple of these, but Mike, what do you got for the big one?
I want one, and I think this is this actor's strong suit, but the guy who plays E.B. Farnham / JF, when he meets Pris, I'm so uncomfortable because you don't know the power dynamic yet, and you very quickly see his creeped show and that what he feels about toys, and you're like, is he going to do something uncomfortable to Daryl Hannah? And I couldn't my shoulders were all the way to my ears throughout that whole scene.
It turns out that he does have an appreciation for these things, as opposed to like he's not fucking. I don't think those little toys that are walking around. But yeah, I hear you, Greg.
Yeah, it's probably such a silly answer in the grand scheme of things, but specifically the way he looks at Rachel when he closes the door on her, where it's like you can see this marriage of his bloodlust and his like actual lust, And I think the movie is doing it in a way to make us feel uncomfortable. But for the next like minute, I do legitimately feel extremely uncomfortable. And part of it is just, it reminds me that in so many of these stories, there is this like, when a love scene comes up, in movies I've watched for so much of my life, there is this weird moment where the woman says no a couple times and then gets like overridden. And we do know now how like noxious that has been to our understanding of consent and everything. And so even when it gives the movie a sharp edge, it legit, does cause me to cringe when I reflect on it.
I mean, another thing that we didn't talk about too is that like it's very 40s, to like have, to say no a couple times, but that just means yes, and maybe that was a reference. But also, his job, her sexual assaulter, if you want to call him that, is to kill androids. Yeah. So who knows what her saying no could mean? Like. This is how I stay alive.
I mean, he looks at her with contempt when he slams the door on her. It's supposed to be passion, I guess, but there is that edge in there of like, I also kill you people, and it's just like, damn, dude, I don't know. Too much going on here.
Yeah, the specificity of that one, like, even though it's from the big scene that we talked about, I'm going to give that one to Greg. Finally, pound for pound performance. Trivia was a bit of a hint of what will not win tonight. Let's go with Greg. Who is going to win?
For me, it has to be Rutger Hauer. He is all over the place with this, and I feel like probably Ridley Scott told him like, let go, just like let it come out, like let it develop as it develops, and he took that and he really went with it. And it's like there's moments where you want him to seem like a cooler villain than he seems, and there's moments like
he's still a bit of a dork.
Remember how he's just suddenly holding a dove?
Uh-huh.
Like he's a drama bitch. He is like he's there for the drama in part of it. He crushes Terrell's head because it's part of like a dramatic move that he can make, and he feels like by gouging out his eyes that also has like imagistic significance to him. And I think that like all those different layers and how uncomfortable you feel are like all these different things Rutger Hauer is doing really effectively and never giving into the desire to just make his character cool or suave or anything. He always pushes so that you're not comfortable with him, and I think that's like such a responsible actor thing to do.
It's interesting. When he kills Tyrell, E.B. Farnham from the HBO show Deadwood is in the room. If he wasn't, would he have just knocked Tyrell off like in the quickest way possible?
Snapped his neck.
Yeah, just like, I'm just going to get this done. But with an audience, I don't know. I got to do it this way. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, it's Rutger Hauer. If you're a geeky little kid like me, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, Merlin, The 10th Kingdom, he was in and out of so many genre, B to Z-list genre stuff growing up, and then being like, oh, this is why. Because this guy's amazing in fucking Blade Runner.
As a kid, I watched this movie with my dad called Blind Fury, where he was a blind samurai. Didn't know back then that it was a comedy. I haven't seen it since then. It's probably super offensive, but I don't know, man. I think the guy's cool. Part of this, and I'm not saying that this is true, but part of this performance sort of feels like he doesn't know English. So they're just like feeding him words and just go. Like, you don't know what you're saying, but just go, and it makes it so much better.
The Venga Boys of replicants.
Finally, guys, Mike, we'll start with you. You love Blade Runner. You
come so far around on it, yes.
I'm saying you in general, but you also do. You want something else. What is your recommendation?
I think if you want Blade Runner, if you like Blade Runner, you want more of that. If you want the moral things to chew on, check out the 2010 film Never Let Me Go with Andrew Garfield, Carey Mulligan, and Keira Knightley. And they are clones that I think for a lot of movies, don't know they are clones, and they only exist to give the real versions of themselves their organs.
The book is fucking amazing.
And the movie
Ishiguro, I can't remember his name.
The movie got trashed when it came out, but like definitely stock has been rising since then.
I'm glad I didn't know that. I fucking loved it when it came out.
Oh, but now you don't love it? Because now
I
you know
like
other people like it?
Other people do
Mike,
like it.
Mike, you should read the book. That author is amazing. Some guy that wrote Remains of the Day. He's such a good author.
Isn't it weird when you find out that Remains of the Day, books like that, were not written in the 1700s?
Yes. Yeah, specifically Remains of the Day, yeah. And you're like, that same guy also wrote the clones being harvested for their organ story. And you're like, okay, that's interesting.
So he lived to be 400 years old? I'm going to jump on Mike real quick, which is Multiplicity. A fantastic movie with Michael
Oh,
Keaton.
yeah.
But one scene that sticks out is when they clone him, and when Michael Keaton wakes up from the process, he's like, "Oh man, that was crazy. How did it go?" And the doctor's like, "What? Well, how are my clones? Did I get cloned?" And the doctor's like, and it points behind his ear, and there's a 2 behind his ear, and that's just a horrifying moment of in cinema history for me. And a lot of Blade Runner is this, a lot of Never Let Me Go is this, but like that finding that out is awful. I don't know. I couldn't put my mind around it. Greg, what do you got?
I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep this week just because we were doing the movie, and it was awesome. But I actually think that if you really, really, really like Blade Runner and you want the aesthetic of it and the feeling of it, seriously read Neuromancer. Like, I think everybody should read Neuromancer. I think it's one of the best books ever written, and it's so cool, and it tackles all these same ideas. And a lot like Blade Runner, it doesn't spend a lot of time explaining itself. You just have to sort of pick up on the vibe and enjoy the world that you're in and read it slowly. It's an amazing, amazing book, and it's part of a trilogy, so then you get 2 other books as well.
An amazing show from 2 amazing competitors, but unfortunately, one of you was more amazing than the other. Mike, who do you think it was?
I think I am human and cannot go up against such a flawless replicant, so I think Greg won.
Greg, do you agree?
I felt like there was a part in trivia where I started running away with it, and then the wheels came off, and from that point forward, I thought Mike caught up to me. I think he edged me out.
We are a scientific show with
Yeah.
points about talking about movies. Trivia sort of ruins that. Every other show without trivia, we are fucking dead on, and we give the exact right amount of points. Trivia fucking blows things up.
Yeah, trivia always gets a little silly season, but that's part of its job.
Greg, you got 27. Mike, you got 30.
Damn!
I think that's the same score you beat me by last week on a movie I hated.
Well, now we know exactly how much more I know about movies than you. 3 points.
And what can I say but nothing? Listeners, I have no excuse except to say that I have a slight tummy ache from too much Taco Bell.
And also, Mike is always going to win when he knows to say almost famous. Like, that was
a good save. I think my nose bled from how hard I concentrated.
Man. See, that's a good thing though. Like that, if I had thought of that, I only would have lost by 1.
okay, so maybe that wasn't the total reason. We have so many awesome shows left. I don't know what you guys are most excited for the most. A Fast Time show that is going to tear us apart as friends. 2 horror movies, Poltergeist and The Thing. We have Tootsie. We've got a Piranha 2 watch along for just the Patreons. This is going to be quite the exciting season. But, and I hesitate to ask this question because it is bad podcasting and bad drama, did we blow our wad?
Yeah, I'm very excited to watch all the movies that are going to lose to Blade Runner.
The one I guess that I still keep like half an eye on is E.T. It's Stevie Spiels. It's a beautiful movie. It's also well made. And I think that we are by definition going to watch it later than this one, right? Like, so like we're going to have watched it more recently when it's time to vote. I think that one has a real puncher's chance. And then whenever there are 2 that have a chance, there's a chance it's going to split and go somewhere completely different.
Right.
So,
and then Dog Day Afternoon fucking wins.
yeah, I would say this whole field is wide open, but this did like better than I thought it would, and that makes me feel like it is probably like the favorite at the moment.
Here's what we can say declaratively, and you don't want to do declarative statements in like competition, but 48 Hours is not going to win.
No, yeah, like that has no chance of winning, and this has like 3 very enthused boys. So the fact that Mike went from like I've never gotten this movie, it's never done anything for me, to that's what Blade Runner is. That might be the thing that really gives it a huge edge. Because for me, I was just like, I watched the movie twice this week, and both times I was like, yeah, it's like my favorite movie. That's not as powerful as like, wait, I get it now.
Speaking of that, should we have regular IQ tests in society? Like, I do think
not
people
me, dude. I would say
dumber.
I'm easily down 2 points per year, maybe per quarter. Like I'm getting dumber at like an incredible rate.
Is it
I used to be
because
getting smarter.
You keep watching that scene with Adam Sandler describing the economy?
And then passing out. Okay, well, Blade Runner, we're not going to talk about you for a while, but
See you soon.
I do think that at the end of this season, your name might come up a couple of times or two. I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations to Mike for winning. Greg, you're going to do it next time.
Man, I guess I got to score more than 27 points to beat this movie expert, Mike Ravags.
It's annoying, right? Because he seems so stupid.
I'm such a
It is
moron.
annoying. Yeah. I think the problem is I have a tendency to sort of like mesmerize you with my good points.
Wait, that's what I
And-
say when you're hosting. That's
Yeah,
why I
and
lose
then
when
when-
you're hosting.
And then when I stop talking, you sort of like come to, and Mike is there.
I
and
just
you're
go,
like, yeah,
And he's
you're
like, "Oh, fart noises
Mark,
are funny."
Mark.
That's like, Greg, you're joking right now, but I do legitimately believe that when anytime Mike wins over me. So
You guys are mean
it's not
friends.
funny. All right. Well, thank you so much for Greg. I am Ryan. And Mike, what is ET short for?
His legs.
He's got
His
those
little
tiny
legs.
little legs.
Because
There
those
you go.
stubby little legs.
I get it now.